Gauranitai. Jaya Radha Kirtan ki, you see golden tie ki. Is waiting for our Cheki Brahmachari, but he's not here. I told him on the way up, and he said he'd be coming. We need him to work that screen there. Can you do it?
No, I can't. You mean the skeleton?
He went somewhere, he said he'd be back, but he's not, so. We'll begin anyway, and you're just going to have to see if you can follow the verse as I read it. Let's hope he appears. So, we've been hearing a lot about Srila Prabhupada this weekend, or these 5 days, 6 days. And so we're going to hear a little bit about what Prabhupada wants us to do. Preach Krishna consciousness. So I chose 2 verses from the 9th chapter of the 7th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Prahlad's prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So this is 7, 9, 43 and 44. I'll read number 43. Naivo dvija paraduratya vairata vitataranyas tabhirya ganaya mahamritam agnachittaha sochaitato vimukha chaitasa indriyartam maya sukhaya varam udvahanto vimudam. So Prahlad Maharaj, he is now, after Lord Nrsingadev destroyed the demon Hiranyakashipu, Prahlad went to pacify and offer beautiful prayers to the Lord. And this whole 9th chapter is practically prayers. And these are some of the later prayers. And the mood is that the Lord is so grateful for Prahlad's devotion to him and his faith in the Lord, despite the fact that he was being tortured in so many ways, killed, tried to be killed. He never gave up his devotional service or his fixation on the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord wants to show in some way, this is the nature of the Lord. Although to receive the Lord is the greatest gift, the Lord still wants to give something more. Prabhupada said he is very kind. So now he's offering so many opportunities for Prahlad Maharaj to take a benediction. And he says, take a benediction from me. And Prahlad Maharaj, just says, my only benediction is to have the opportunity to worship you, to serve you. But the Lord is persistent. He continues. And then Prahlad says, then, I'm not a merchant. I don't worship you for something in return. But the Lord still doesn't give up. He doesn't leave him alone. He says, take something, and please make me feel good by accepting something from me. I just want to give you something. The Lord's love for his devotee is so strong. So he says, So one of the prayers, he says, "O best of great personalities, I'm not at all afraid of material existence. For wherever I stay, I'm fully absorbed in thoughts of your glories and activities. My concern is only for the fools and rascals who have made elaborate plans for material happiness, maintaining their families, societies, and countries. I'm simply concerned with love for them." And now Prahlad reveals his heart. His main concern is that the conditioned souls are suffering in this material world. They don't know actually their own best interest, and they're fully absorbed in the wrong thing, and therefore they're always suffering. So he wants to help them. And Prabhupada says people make big plans to enjoy in this material world, but then time finishes all their plans. But I won't read that purport. I'll go on to the next one, which is pretty much the topic of the class. And this is verse number 44. Prayena deva munaya sevai mukta kamam maunam charanti vijana paratanishtaha naitam viraha kripanan vimuksa eko nanyatva asya sharanam brahmato nupasye. So then Prahlad Maharaj explains further, "My dear Lord Nrsinga, I see that there are many saintly persons indeed, but they are interested only in their own deliverance. Not caring for the big cities and towns, they go to the Himalayas or to the forest, or meditate with vows of silence, monavrata. They are not..." Oops, we lost it here. Oh no. Okay, oops, I think where did that verse come from? I pushed the wrong button and now I'm stuck. Okay. Technology is not my forte. He said, they are not interested in delivering others. As for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone, leaving inside all the fools and rascals. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. Therefore, I wish to bring them back to shelter at your lotus feet. And so Prabhupada's purport. This is the decision of the Vaishnavas. The pure devotee of the Lord. For himself, he has no problems, even if he has to stay in this material world, because his only business is to remain in Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious person can go to hell and still be happy. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj says, Naivo Dvija Paradoratya Vitaranya. O bust of the great personalities, I am not at all afraid of material existence. The pure devotee is never unhappy in any condition of life. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 6:17-25. Narayana para sarve nakuscha chana bibyati swarga pravarga niraksha apitu yarta darshanam. Devotees solely engaged in devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. For a devotee being situated in the heavenly planets and being in the hellish planets are equal. For a devotee lives neither in hell nor in heaven, but with Krishna in the spiritual world. The secret of success for the devotee is not understood by the karmis and jnanis. Karmis therefore try to be happy by material adjustment, and jnanis want to be happy by becoming one with the Supreme. The devotee has no such interest. He is not interested in so-called meditation in the Himalayas or the forest. Rather, his interest is in the busiest part of the world, where he teaches people Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious movement was started for this purpose. We do not teach one to meditate in a secluded place so that one may show that he has become very much advanced and may be proud of his so-called transcendental meditation. Although he engages in all sorts of foolish materialist activities, a Vaishnava like Prahlad Maharaj is not interested in such a bluff of spiritual advancement. Rather, he is interested in enlightening people in Krishna consciousness because that is the only way for them to become happy. Prahlad Maharaj says clearly, Nayam tvav asya sharanam brahmato nupasye. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. One wanders within the universe, life of delight, but by the grace of a devotee, a servant of the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one can get the clue to Krishna consciousness, and then not only become happy in this world, but also return back home, back to Godhead. That is the real target in life. The members of the Krishna conscious movement are not at all interested in so-called meditation in the Himalayas or in the forest of Canada. Oh, I'm sorry. Where one will only make a show of meditation. Nor are they interested in opening many schools for yoga and living, what is it called? Simple living, not the simple living, but the art of living, no. Nor are they interested in opening many schools for yoga and meditation in cities. Rather, every member of the Krishna conscious movement is interested in going door to door to try to convince people about the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, teachings of Lord Chaitanya. The purpose of the Hare Krishna movement, that is the purpose of the Hare Krishna movement. Members of the Krishna conscious movement must be fully convinced that without Krishna, one cannot be happy. Thus, the Krishna conscious person avoids all kinds of pseudo-spiritualists, transcendentalists, meditators, monists, philosophers, and philanthropists. Om Agyanti Mirandasya Gina Jana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadammayam Dadati Swam Padati Kam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shri Makti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Resatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Prahlad Maharaj is one of the Mahajans. And that means those persons who teach the principles of bhakti. There are 12 Mahajans who are qualified to give us the path of bhakti marg, the path of bhakti. And what is he saying? He said, my only concern is about those persons in the material world who are suffering. So my dear Lord, if you want to give me a benediction, this is what you can do. The Lord was so persistent, wanted to give Prahlad Maharaj some reciprocation for his devotion and his dedication. Prahlad Maharaj said, let me preach on your behalf. So this is the heart of a great soul. He's happy, satisfied, but he's unhappy. He takes on the mood of the Lord. The more Lord is like that. The Lord is Atma Rama. And he's always fully in the transcendental position and always full of the knowledge and happiness. But the Lord's heart feels some unhappiness for the suffering conditioned souls. Therefore he comes to this world simply to do that. He can perform his pastimes anywhere and everywhere, but he comes where it's most needed in order to uplift the conditioned souls and give them a chance to again awaken their ultimate and real happiness, devotion to him. So the Lord does it himself, and he empowers others to do it, and he's also requesting everyone to do it through his pure devotee. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I believe it's in the 9th chapter of Adi Lila, Lord Chaitanya makes a very kind of, he's pleading, he's kind of saying, he says, I am a gardener, and I have this storehouse full of fruit, and the fruit is the fruit of love of God. And it's really sweet. And I'm tasting that fruit, and I'm trying to distribute that fruit to everyone, because I want everyone to taste this sweet fruit. But I'm only one person. How can I do it alone? So please, taste these fruits yourself, and then give these fruits to others. So he's inviting us to do both, not just one, to taste them, but to distribute them. So it's hard to distribute them unless we can taste them, because that taste is an inspiration for distribution. But what motivates the devotee is the heart of the Lord. We might not be so, or one might not be so compassionate towards the fallen conditioned souls. I mean, that's a high state of bhakti, where one feels the suffering of others, and one feels the happiness of others. It's explained in the Bhagavatam that a pure devotee feels the happiness of others when they become happy by Krishna consciousness, and he feels their unhappiness due to their neglect of Krishna consciousness. So he empathizes with them, although he's still fixed in his own Krishna consciousness. But because the Lord wants this more than anything, the devotee thinks, I want to satisfy the Lord, and therefore I want to please the Lord by bringing others. So sometimes we joke, maybe it's a joke, maybe it's a speculation. So you go back to home, back to Godhead, and Krishna greets you and says, who else did you bring? And you say, I came alone. And he says, all right, go back and come again. Bring somebody with you. So this is something of, has an element of reality in it. That to become Krishna conscious really, in the real sense of the word, is, Prabhupada said, is two parts. He says, become Krishna conscious and then make others Krishna conscious. So yesterday we went through a whole list of things that were ways that we could preach, practical, philosophical, things that we do, things that maybe we might not do. We came up with a list of about 30 different ways, which was just a synopsis of how many possible ways we can preach. Today I would like to go to the other side. What is stopping us, or what are the obstacles that we will meet, both internally and externally, when we want to preach? What are those mindsets that cause us not to take up preaching? And what are those obstacles that are in the external world that causes us to experience difficulties when we make this effort to preach? So we can create another list today. Okay? So what is stopping us from preaching internally, externally, like that? So who could think of one? Yes.
External, sometimes governments are inimical.
Okay. So the local governments are not very favorable, and they may even try to stop you. And that this is part of the history of our Krishna consciousness movement. I was listening to Srila Prabhupada this morning in one of his lectures. It was in Seattle, 1968. He just left Montreal, came to Seattle. He's talking about Prahlad Maharaj. And he's talking that, when you try to preach, you will always meet resistance. But that doesn't matter. We still don't give up because of the resistance. He said they might try to torture us. He compared us to Prahlad. But still, that doesn't deter us from trying to preach. So And Prabhupada was speaking so nonchalantly. He wasn't like really, he was just saying, this is a devotee. Devotee is never swayed by the external obstacles, such as governments or whatever. What else? Yesterday we heard, one more. Well, yesterday we heard from Pragosh in the video when he was explaining how when he kept getting stopped in Hawaii and getting taken by or arrested, the man said, don't do it again or are you going to go to jail? He said, I'm going to do it again. You're going to see me out there tomorrow. And he actually convinced the person not to arrest him by his determination. I'll tell you a story later, maybe, because right now we want to keep the mood of these different things, but I have an interesting story, which was I was personally involved in that. Yes, Gokulananda Prabhu.
Another obstacle we're finding in Montreal, Quebec, there's a huge wave of, the social climate has really shifted the last 30, 40 years. It used to be an ultra-religious region, all 9% Catholic, everything was very religious, and now the opposite is happening. Religion is really practically banned, and there's a wave of atheism actually coming in the new generation. The millennium generation are basically atheists.
Is it atheism, or they're just
No,
they're frustrated with organized religions?
The religious tyranny. The Catholic Church really was tyrannical, deciding everything for everyone.
A recent survey shows that people are moving away from organized religion and taking up what they say, various types of spiritual activities, doing it on their own.
What percentage of the population is into that?
It's growing.
Okay.
It's really growing.
That's a result of material frustration.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're very religious, but they have this inclination for spirituality.
That's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
to be seen. Just like at the gathering yesterday, these are spiritually minded people that we were able to give them a name, eh?
Yeah.
The best of that new wave, eh?
Yeah, but there's a lot of that. I mean, it's growing. But when it comes to organized religion, that's why when they asked me to speak yesterday, I said, this is not an organized religion. You just chant Hare Krishna and dance and eat nice food. Hey, that's all we have to say, And then once they get in, then we tell them about other things. But we got, Lakshmi Moni's got the mic there. Okay. You're next.
Two things come to mind. One is the, quote, Indianization of ISKCON. That, that our temples tend to be very ethnically oriented, which prevents us from bringing local people in sometimes. They don't feel comfortable, they don't feel at home, and they feel like they entered into a foreign country, into a foreign practice, and too many trappings of Indian.
Has a certain connotation that they experience, and then that kind of keeps them thinking that, well, I don't know if I want to join an Indian religion. Yeah.
And the other one is just in the society in general is a very low level of trust in anybody and anything. They just trust themselves. They don't trust anybody else.
So that's an obstacle for us, because we have to get beyond that, right? We have to somehow break that false feeling of no trust and create trust. So, okay, good, thank you. That's a nice point. And also, yeah, to take that a little bit further, I find that a lot because I go to Chicago and new people come every week, but then we don't see them anymore. And a lot of times they just think, oh, it's an Indian temple. So, if they give themselves a little chance, they'll find something different, but this is an impression. So we have to somehow or other, what they did in Italy, my godbrother Tridas, he was having the Italians come and the Indians come, and then he had two separate programs for them. And both programs grew because of that. Yeah.
Certainly do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a large Tamil population
coalition in Zurich. And so they have Tamil Sunday feast at noon,
Mhm.
1 o'clock, and then they have a feast for the locals in the evening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tactic and it works, so, yes.
Just a little comment on this. In Montreal, we have like a French and English class. It's not a different program, but at least there's a class.
Yeah,
Except for the announcements. They only say the announcement in English sometimes, of course.
Sometimes,
Of
yeah.
course. But sometimes when there's big festival, they have only the English class when there is an important guest.
And that last meeting
That's
is
something
very
that's really
difficult.
to use the Sunday feast in a versatile way takes a little bit of restructuring of what we have now. And there's ideas on how to do that, how to bring people in and then have different things going on in the Sunday feast that were maybe for different tastes or different attractions like that. Krishna Kirtan.
In San Diego, they had a program on Saturday for the Indians, and the Sunday feast was for people.
Yeah, that's what they're doing in Italy also. So it works like that. It works. Both feel more comfortable.
So I had another point
Yeah, of course.
about what's stopping us.
Yeah,
Unless there was other comments about the current.
No.
that can go on forever. You said.
I have two.
Yeah, sure. You can have three if you want.
But one is more specific to the question. The other one is
Is it internal or external?
well, internal. It's sometimes we have a mental block of ourself. We lack confidence and we are afraid of rejection for all these reasons. you
Okay.
know. Or we think, oh, this person's not interested. These people won't be interested in Krishna consciousness because of all these reasons. We ourselves put ourselves mental blocks,
Mm-hmm.
not having confidence.
So what's the psychological undercurrent that makes us think they don't want it?
Well, I mean, me personally, I think sometimes it's because either we don't relish Krishna consciousness enough ourselves, we don't have enough faith ourselves, or that's often the root problem.
Or some people feel like they just don't want to speak to non-devotees.
Being shy.
Yeah. I remember in New Vrindavan, this was really bad. We were there, and we would do, devotees always had, a lot of service to. And then when guests come, everybody would run to try to find somebody to talk to the guests when you were right there, and all you could do was just walk up and start talking to them. Let me find a devotee who likes to talk to the guests, and everybody's running around.
Okay.
And a lot of times the guests were waiting or neglected because nobody took time.
And that was exactly my second point, was that we have a first contact. We might go out and have first contact, but if we don't have a cultivation program or follow-up program, often our preaching, it's not has the full potential because so many people come, but they don't, like the guests, we don't speak to them, or we don't have a program.
So what does it take to overcome that?
Organization, finding people.
And maybe understanding deeper that when you make an attempt, Krishna is with you if you're sincerely trying. And even if you somehow or other are not successful, you can say, I tried. I think maybe your point of being rejected causes persons to think ahead of time that this might not work, so I'm not going to do it. That's also a psychological aberration, to think, oh, I'll be rejected. Yes?
One thing is that because we've shifted to a very congregational movement, and many of the temples are pretty much empty during the day. People are working outside, people live outside, and so if someone comes, there's no one there.
Right.
And also engaging them, keeping people engaged in service. I remember when I first came to the Hare Krishna movement, we were doing things. We were making the deities' clothes, we were cooking and doing things in the temple all day. But now we send our clothes to India. We don't do so much things in the temple during the day, and it becomes Yeah, so there's no one to engage people, and people are left alone. Here's a mop, just, sweep, and then there's no one to be with.
Our temples are, right now, percentage-wise, the large majority, almost 85 to 90% of our devotees live outside the temples. There's a few temples that are really, still have a lot of devotees in, but they're very few. Very few. But one of the things that we can overcome is that you have what they call a guest master, or someone whose service is to greet people. And that person could have other services too during the day, but when guests come, that becomes a service. I was Prabhupada's pujari when the Palace of Gold opened in 1979. I became the second pujari in 1980. And during the day, it was myself and the cook. That's all that were there. And one young lady, she was cleaning, and she would clean all day. And if I was doing puja and the guests walked in, the instructions to me was you stop your puja and you speak to the guests. I did that. And another time, they said that if you put Prabhupada to rest, because he would take rest after lunch, would close the doors. If guests come, you can open the doors again, so they can see Prabhupada. They came all this way to see Prabhupada, and they came at the time when he was resting, you open the doors. So more of my service was about the people coming in, along with, pujari work. Yes.
Well, Prabhupada confirmed that in the famous letter, where he actually stated that directly. He says, the guests are the most important part of the temple. And the temple exists for the guests to have prasadam, darshan, and kitab. And therefore, if you're doing puja, you stop the puja and take care of the guests, as long as that's needed.
Yeah.
It's more important than the worship.
Yeah, the Prabhupada used to tell us it's not your temple, it's Krishna's temple, and Krishna's for everybody. We are simply the caretakers and custodians of the place, and then when people come, we're happy to see that as our most important service, to make them feel welcomed in whatever way we can.
Another thing that might stop us is devotees avadhutaness. That Lakshmana Sringaprabhu in 55th Street, he used to make announcements, if you really want to preach, don't wear 2 different color socks.
Or don't wear any socks.
Devotees sometimes are very avadhuta-ish, and it concerns people.
Turns people off.
Yeah.
That's why you have to have someone who is there actually, that's their service, to
But
welcome
even if
people.
there's one person that's their service, it's like Siddhartha, you can't hide everybody in the new city, and they'll never see any other devotee. They're going to see the devotees, and if the devotees don't behave properly or don't walk the walk, talk the talk, then...
That's up to us to rectify that. Yeah. Yeah, the mood is for, I can tell a nice story. This was told to me by Gauranga from Chaupati, where Prabhupada was in the temple and obviously some important guest came. Prabhupada was talking to him and immediately turned to one devotee who was with him and said, get him some Mahaprasadam. So the devotee went into the pujari room, and the pujari had just taken the offering and put it on the altar. And he was about to make the offering when the devotee came in. And the devotee said, Prabhupada wants some maha. He said, well, there's no maha now, we're making the offering, if you can wait till after the offering. So the devotee went back to Prabhupada and explained. Prabhupada said, no, get it now. So when he came back in, the pujari was doing his Gayatri. He walked right past the pujari onto the altar and took the tray off the altar. And because Prabhupada said it. So he's walking out, and the pujari, he's thinking, oh my God, what's going on? I don't know if he finished his Gayatri, but he chased after the devotee with the prasadam, and they both met at Prabhupada at the same time. Now, of course, this is a little miscommunication, you could say, But the point was that Prabhupada saw that this is the most important thing. And so we can't always just bend those rules like that, but we should keep that concept in mind that the guests are what the temple is about. And that's a potential devotee or an opportunity to give someone Krishna conscious. Yes?
In relation to your story, Prabhupada told us that we should always have prashadam around. You know, it doesn't have to be that you have to walk on the altar and take the plate off the altar. That's a bit of extreme. But if you have some, you know, fruits or some samosa or something around so that when guests come, they can get some prashadam.
Yeah, some temples have prashadam available right at the door when they come in.
Yeah, and it has to be nice. I mean, I know in Toronto, sometimes there's lots of prashadam around, but it sits there all day in open bowls on a table, and anyone coming in and looking at it might get very scared. You know, if you say there's prashadam, it's like, okay.
Well, just to give it a good example, in Chicago, right near the door, they have the Maha Sweets, and then they have a clear covered bowl over the top. Just lift it up, you can take a sweet, and then that's
It's
it.
really nice, it's like cake.
Yeah, like a cake container, yeah. Mataji in the back, yeah.
I find sometimes internal obstacle is our intelligence. I'll give you an example.
Intentions or eternal obstacles? Internal.
Internal. Yeah, like the other day we were doing Ainam by the side of the beach, and I had in mind I will go distribute books. But then my intelligence was telling me, well, these people, they have no money. They're just lying by the beach and they are in swimming suits, so they're not going to give you donation. And then I had a fight with my intelligence, so-called, that stopped me from doing book distribution. So I find sometimes the intelligence is our enemy because we put so many obstacles like that.
Yeah, good point. We don't have that strong desire, and therefore we find obstacles by the external environment. What's another one that sometimes it's quite obvious? Huh? The weather. The weather. Oh, it's too cold.
Too hot.
And the karmis are just as cold as the weather, so. Too hot? Yeah, that could be also it. It's usually too cold. That's another one.
So then what do you do when your intelligence is telling you?
You have to use another type of intelligence that says that Krishna wants it. I had that experience. I was out on my own doing books, and I was alone in my van, and that day I just wanted to read, and I was cold out, and I looked at the place I was in, and I think these people are colder than the weather. So I was fighting. My mind kept saying, that, read, and my intelligence was saying, no, you got to go out there. So finally I came to the point, this will please Prabhupada, so I'm going to go. And when I did, my conception of what was not right changed. It became good. So there's another element there that when you make a sacrifice, Krishna sees that and makes things different. Yeah.
Is that we are not advanced enough when we always choose no?
Well, don't choose no. Try to be more, Prabhupada would say, do the right thing. The point is, find your way to preach. And then if that's comfortable enough, and then there may always be some obstacles mentally, externally, then you can, but if you're put in a situation where you may have to preach the way you don't want to, or you can't, you don't have that adhikari to preach that way, then you might find the obstacles become bigger. Yeah, bigger ones. So yeah, find an inn that you feel comfortable with and go for it.
Maharaj, I'm sorry I couldn't attend your other classes, and therefore what I'm going to say you probably already covered, but preaching is our duty and our legacy at Prabhupada. And we wouldn't, none of us would be here if Prabhupada had not, out of compassion, come and he delivered us from our ignorance and whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a duty that gets immediate rewards. You feel deep satisfaction that you please Prabhupada. And it's very, very uplifting.
Yeah.
And it's the gift that keeps giving. But the more you do it, the more you feel satisfied and the more you're driven to get to that, good state of consciousness. So
Prabhupada makes this point, which I mentioned a couple times, that even if you're not successful, the attempt itself is very pleasing to the Lord. The point is that success actually is the attempt, and the results are extra. The results are extra, because the results depend on the Lord, not on us. Okay, what else may prevent us, either externally? Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Well, it's more or less of a question, maybe at the same time. So Prabhupada is expressing that, Prabhupada in his purport that so the pure devotee is always happy. He doesn't have any concern for himself. So I didn't find maybe that was exactly my description. Maybe I have some concern for myself. Maybe I'm happy, maybe I'm not happy also. So is it possible for one to preach if he's like, maybe like he could be unhappy?
Well, it's not a good start, but because that might rub off on the people you talk to. But happiness is a state of consciousness, so think about something that can change your state to a more pleasing consciousness. Think of something that will make you happy or cause you to become happy. That's practical. Prabhupada wants it. These people are suffering. The temple needs some money. In other words, look for the positive. Unhappiness is a symptom of negativity. Now you want to go for the other side. Look for the positive aspect that will inspire you to get beyond this unhappiness. I mean, we all struggle with that. We all struggle with that. But look for something. Look at your past successes and reflect on them and see how you can recreate those. It's not that you're always unhappy, you just happen to be unhappy at this time. In the past you were happier. It's the modes, that's all. The modes of material nature infect our consciousness in a certain way, and we feel happy, less happy, more happy, or unhappy. It's the modes. And you have to push ourselves beyond these modes. Yeah, that's all. If you watch the external environment, you can see how people are controlled by the modes, especially the non-devotees. And so when we get affected by that same energy, then we realize, hey, I got to get out of these modes. And you may want to approach your service in a different way that day, so you can see if it brings you more happiness. The thing is, the most important thing is we have to do our service. That's why we're here, to serve. And our service will make us happy, the service will please Krishna. Just the endeavor itself is pleasing to the Lord. Okay, Prabhu, yes.
I speak on behalf of those who are not living in the temple, like myself. So, as far as preaching, I find that I consider my security also. Like for instance, I'm thinking if I preach, I may lose my job.
Why? Because somebody will see you and tell your boss?
No, but I was thinking, well, because of the influence of Krishna consciousness, it requires people to change a bit, actually.
Oh, if you become too Krishna conscious, you may not want to work anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can close the factories.
But it's not a factory, my work, but I was thinking about
It's a
this.
general term.
Okay, but I was thinking about this, how the mind is, because I first went, because in the purport it's described going door to door. And I asked many devotees, I don't see many people going door to door. But I've done it in my town, and it was quite successful actually, to my surprise. But I became a little nervous when I accepted a work that I accepted from the city. I work for the city where I am, and I was thinking that I don't know how much dosage I have to give around my people. So in this way I became more quiet.
Oh, you mean balancing the service with your work? How much for work, how much for service?
He means he might meet people he knows when he's going door to door.
Oh, you might meet people you know.
I actually had a devotee, we asked him to come with us door to door, and he actually told us that exact excuse. He says, I'm afraid to get fired from my work because if I meet people from my work and they know I'm Krishna conscious, I might get fired. I was like, okay. But
No, but
that's an actual reason.
Yeah, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
It's because of the certain level of security that we experience. We work so hard to develop, because I was living in Krishna consciousness
So I have two answers for that.
Yes, go ahead.
One, don't worry about it, and two, do another type of preaching. If that's your concern, then preach in a different way. That's all, where you won't have that risk. That's all. And we're not talking about you have to preach in a certain way. You have to preach. That's all. So look for another avenue to give Krishna consciousness. If that's a threat to your,
So is that internal or external?
It's a combination.
It feels like it.
Combination of both. Yeah.
But it's hard to overcome because you work hard to get to a certain social level, but maybe once you accept it, you should deliver the
Just
goods.
preach another way. That's all. That's all. You can find other avenues to do that. We went through 30 ways that we can preach. Preach by writing articles, you can preach through dramas, you can preach through medias, various types of medias. So many ways you can preach.
So Maharaj, actually, so I think what you're pointing out is actually that is an obstacle to think that there is only one specific way to preach.
Yeah, that's another obstacle.
I didn't hear.
And he said that if you think that's the only way to preach, that's another form of an obstacle. The idea is to somehow or other preach, outreach, somehow or other be an instrument for Krishna's mercy for others in some way. Just like there's one god sister of mine in Denver, her name is Nidra. Yeah, she does books, but on the side, she stays in the temple area, and when people come in the door, she gives them Mahaprasadam or a book, makes friends with them. So she doesn't really have to go out of the temple all the time just to preach. She can preach near the temple or around the temple. So there's different ways. He can preach at home too. Yes. Gokulananda.
Well, just coming back to the point of in your job environment, you have to be cool-headed how you proceed in sharing your convictions. Just that we have a friend.
So being hot-headed is one of the obstacles.
Being what?
Being not cool-headed is one of the obstacles. Yeah. So.
Well, I've got a quick story. Pradyumna, one of our friends, he got a job in a factory they were processing food, vegetarian type food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and but he wasn't agreeing with the fellow workers' thing about being vegan. And he took really a stand that, it's God's arrangement that we're meant to protect the cow, and the cow gives us the best gift, the best food, and it's not, he was really sticking to his thing. And the employee got so agitated, he complained to the boss, and after 2 or 3 complaints, the boss fired Pajumna. Because, in fact, in Canada, the boss can't fire you after 7 months for wrongful dismissal for religious or personal convictions. But he had not worked there more than 4 months because he spoke out too loudly about his way of life.
Well, that's a tactic.
Yeah.
So you used the wrong tactic.
Yeah.
So preaching is a tactic also.
Yeah. He was right in principle, but not in applying it in the right time and circumstance.
So that might be another one. Inexperience in preaching, not knowing how to deal with the audience, and therefore sometimes that causes one not to do it, or to have a bad experience, and based on that unpleasant experience, not bad, unpleasant experience, we're hesitant to do it again. Another obstacle like that. Yes?
You can say a lack of strong sadhana, leading to a lack of enthusiasm.
If our sadhana is not strong enough to give us the enthusiasm, then yeah, that's a major obstacle. That'll work in all areas. Sadhana, if it's not, it'll impinge upon any aspect of our devotional service. And when you're preaching, you have to have some kind of conviction that comes by way of the process of devotional service, because you're trying to convince others in some form or another. Good point. Yeah, that's a nice one. You write that one in? Lack of strong sadhana. Well, the wrong strong has to be in there, not just sadhana. Yes.
I mean, this is more a comment. I mean, it works for me, maybe because I have a little bit of experience in the ashram, but since like the ashram, sadhana has been more of a struggle, responsibility with the small kids and just managing everything. But I found if I maintain my desire to preach, it gives me more motivation for my sadhana.
They're reciprocal, yeah.
So I found that relationship. Yeah, I have to have good sadhana because I want to preach properly.
And if you're preaching, you'll be inspired for your sadhana also. Yeah. Good point.
So sometimes I found, me personally, I found the desire to preach, I need to include it in my sadhana.
Right.
Trying to preach, or else I found I lose taste, or I lose purpose.
Right. And they're very much with sadhana, service, sadhya, the goal. So all three are there, yeah. They're connected, intricately connected, yeah. If you're just doing sadhana and you're not doing any service, then your sadhana will actually go down after some time. Or you'll develop a wrong attitude. You have to express your sadhana through your service, yes.
So I have two. The first one is from my own experience and how I got into the movement was that I had several people who were able to answer all of my questions. And I had a lot of questions. So we see today that people are more intellectual and more skeptical and doubting, and I was very skeptical. But because I had those people that were very strong in the philosophy, and I wasn't very strong in my bhakti, so then I had to be convinced, and I also, of course, I did my part in reading as well.
That was good fortune.
Yeah. So having people like that and people who are well versed in the Bhagavatam and all the other books.
Prabhupada wanted us all to be able to answer questions if we're on the spot. When I took sannyas, the first thing they told me is you have to be ready to speak at any time, any place, on any subject. That's what they told me. Because sometimes we think, we have to prepare for the lecture. Or I can't give a lecture if I'm not prepared. No, you have to know by practical understanding through hearing and through your previous reading, and whatever situation you're in, you have to somehow or other be equipped to respond. And that's the duty of the devotees. And the response is always according to the individual's understanding. So that response can be in different ways, like that.
Yes, and I think that it's also beneficial to be well versed in other forms of yoga and different religions, because then people will ask you about that, right? Because they're interested in spirituality. So they might want to know about Yogananda or Shivananda or Sadhguru, this person, that person. And then if you know about those people too, then they'll be more likely to, open up. Because you're not just, Krishna
that may be
consciousness.
helpful, but I don't think that's a requirement, because you can always explain what is the positive without so much talking about what is not. That has some element of necessity. But if you know clearly what is the practice and how to answer the questions, then that's more important than telling people what is not. But yeah, so you can still preach even if you don't know all the other philosophies.
And my second one is that giving people just as much as they can take and kind of testing the waters. So starting out with, like some kirtan video on YouTube, and then inviting them to a kirtan program that's outside the temple, just, getting a little taste of it, and just, easing them into it little by little.
Yeah, you have to know your audience. I preach in jails a lot, and so my topics are pretty much limited. So I have to pick certain topics from this limited amount of topics I have. And I usually wind up doing the same topic in different places.
What's the limited?
Huh?
What's the reason for the limited?
You're talking to people who are in prison. So that's the limitation already. Their whole mindset is to get out of there. Or how they can somehow live in this place and still be happy. So you have to focus on those two things. What is their interest? If you get too philosophical and just start quoting verses and saying that, he's talking about, the opulences of Krishna. Prabhupada tells this story about the miners. You know that one?
No.
Yeah, the miners. One Christian priest. He came to one place in upstate. It was in the UK, and he wanted to preach to these miners. So he's talking to them, and they're listening. And he says that if you don't worship Jesus, you'll go to hell. And they said, well, what is hell? And he said, it's dark, it's cold, damp. He said, well, that's our mind. We're living every day. So he didn't know, he wasn't getting anyway. Finally he said, but there's no newspapers in hell. And they said, oh, that's terrible. No newspapers. So he found the end by, finding, what will really resonate with their attraction. Yes, Lakshmi.
I was thinking one obstacle internal probably is that we don't admit what we don't know.
We don't admit what we don't know.
No, to admit, to say to somebody, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out, or talk to somebody else because I'm not really expert there. I mean, you have to know your limitations, otherwise turn people off.
How is that an obstacle?
Well, it's an obstacle if you're not, maybe the real obstacle is that you are attached to a certain result.
Okay.
And because you're attached to a certain result, it results in two things: dishonesty about what you don't know, and also, even when you go out, if you don't succeed overtly, you think you're a failure, but you're not necessarily a failure. Like you said, the very act of doing it is in itself a victory. But if you're attached to the result, then you won't feel that way.
Right. So the idea is to know that the results belong to Krishna. In other words, Krishna makes it. He says it in the Gita, the results are not within your power to happen. So if we know that point, then we depend on Krishna when we're out there. We depend on Prabhupada. Like that. Tell you a story. This is an interesting story. We were preaching in Cincinnati, in Ohio, And I was the temple president, and we decided to go on Sankirtan. It was on a Saturday. And when we got there was about 25 of us. There was 2 sannyasis along with myself, 3 of us. And we saw there was a big festival in the downtown area, and the restaurants had commissioned areas of the city to set up their little booths so they could give samples of their food to people to come by so they would advertise their restaurants. And they pay a good amount of money to get a booth. So we were doing Harinam Sankirtan. And there was one devotee with us, her name was Landini. Maybe you've heard of her. She was an amazing person, and she had a set of gurnitais she would always carry with her. They were about this big, maybe about this big. And she brought a book table, and she set up the book table with gurnitai on there. And so we're all doing Harinam through the streets, and finally, after some time, the police come up to them and said, you know, we're getting complaints from the restaurant owners. It's becoming disturbing to their customers. So you guys are going to have to stop. So we said yes, but then we didn't. I don't know if we said yes, but we just listened, and then we went on and did some more. So they came up a second time, and they approached us again. More complaints are coming. We told you to stop. If you don't do it, you're going to get arrested next time. We kind of remained quiet, and then we went out and did more. So we kept going. So this time they came with their paddy wagons, and they just started rounding up all the devotees and putting them in the paddy wagons. So they came up to her, and she's there with Gaurnitai deities and a book table, and they said, you're under arrest. And she said, well, if you arrest me, you have to arrest them too, Gaurnitai. So they said, all right. So Gaurnitai went to jail, along with, I got away. I somehow snuck out. I don't like to get arrested, so I did a little bit of, reconnaissance. And so a few of us got away. So most of us are in jail. It's Saturday. The court case is on Monday morning. So the Gaurnitai is in jail overnight. Monday morning comes, there's a hearing, a judge is there, the arresting police officer is there to make the complaint. So the judge hears, and he's listening, he sees us, and then he turns to the devotees and he says, all right, we have to respect these other people. They paid money, you caused the disturbances, but we're not going to press charges. We're going to let you go. But on one condition, you have to promise never to do it again. It means no more Harinam. So Landini, she was there, she spoke up, she says, we can't make that promise. She said, they have given the order, and she points to Gaurnitai. They have given the order, we follow them because that's the Lord. And so the judge for a moment was speechless. He didn't know what to say. He looked at the police officer and he went. And then the judge just said, all right, get out of here. Go. So she was so bold. I mean, she was thinking, this is the order of the Lord. We're out there on the Lord. Your order is okay, but there's a higher order. That was her conviction, like that. So yeah, this is a nice example of determination. If you read the history of Australia, how many times the devotees were getting arrested in Australia? And Prabhupada said, just keep getting arrested. And they would go out, do books, and do Harinam, get arrested, go to jail, they get out, they go out again. Finally, they got sympathy from the people. And the people started putting pressure on some of the local officials. And it became allowed after a while. So, yeah, because this is Lord Chaitanya's order. Yes?
It happened to me on the Benji Fest in Florida also. They came to me and we were doing book distribution. And they came to me and said, well, you cannot do it if you don't have a permit. And he said, you know, all the other persons, they have permits. So I just said, well, we do this every year. I don't see why it's different. And they let me go.
Yeah, you had history behind you. Yeah, I think we have to be fixed in what we believe in. And that makes all these other obstacles insignificant. Okay, so, let's see, what time is it? 11:30, I'm supposed to stop at 11:30, right? Any last comments about some obstacles? Yes?
Just a question for you. You said that you said that story. Is that story about Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was Cincinnati, Ohio. That was 1987. In the summer of 87. Okay. Yes?
You said you had another story you want?
Oh, that was the one. That was the one. Okay, so just to recap the idea, Prabhupada said more preaching, better preaching, more preaching. So this is Lord Chaitanya's movement. I think Ekalavya, he says purity is the force. That was his presentation. There's a little, I don't know what do you call it, a series of statements that have been circling around ISKCON for years. Books are the basis, utility is the principle, preaching is the essence, purity is the force. So preaching is the essence. It means that this is what makes our society what it is, to give Krishna consciousness to others. And as Prabhupada said, if you do that, you're immediately recognized by Krishna, even if the results are not up to what you expect. The recognition is guaranteed. So to preach is a risk. There's no question about it. There's a risk. And if you become too strong, we become too strong as a society, you can expect more and more repression. Sometimes devotees are afraid of that, and that if we become too powerful, then people will come down on us. This is the history of spiritual movements all around the world. Look what happened to the Christians. They were persecuted for their beliefs and for their trying to convert others. But as soon as the forces come down on you, what happens is you gain sympathy from the rest of the society, and that's good preaching. When repression comes, you get a lot of support. That happens all the time. So we have nothing to lose. We have anything to gain. And we want to make Prabhupada smile. If Prabhupada smiles, then our life is happy. Our life is successful. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.